Hey, guess what? It's Wednesday. My scraper's broken.
Hmm.
I have 30 meetings. We have basketball starting right now. Alex is gone. I haven't won a bet in like 3 days. World's a mess, but all's well in the world because Frank's here. If you don't, if you don't know Frank, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with your life that has put you in that dark world. But Frank and I used to do a show every day at 5, way back.
We did.
This is way back, like 2 years ago, and it was the worst show on gambling Twitter history, I suppose. As far as
If
like, there were days
if
where we just didn't even talk about sports betting
if
picks.
gambling was your thing, then sure, but I would maybe argue it was the best show
Yeah, no,
considering.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it was the worst show. If you were like, hey, maybe these guys will give me something to bet. I feel like we gave some actionable stuff, but it was just always really random. We got talking about the old show. What was the closing line?
Yeah, it was good. It's exciting. I looked forward to it every day, and then my power would go out, and you would just have to sit there and talk to yourself for quite a while. It was
That
pretty exciting.
was, yeah. If anyone remembers that deep dive where Drew just dropped because his battery died, Frank prepped me for that. Frank, what was it? Like a lightning storm. A lightning storm just took out your power. But yeah, Frank. If you don't know Frank, he's a good guy. He bet some golf. He bet some basketball. Secretly bet some hockey. I'm sure still. You bet baseball. You're not going to bet baseball this year. It doesn't look like. We can talk about that, but
Yeah, we'll see.
it's funny. Hopefully, you put in a bunch of groundwork already, and then they don't have a season, just because that's a little funny to me. But
Yeah, I've been waiting, so like kind of redo and reprime my projection system every year, and it's a lot of work because I'm not like a savant at programming languages. But I've just been holding off, man, because I'm like, I'm gonna do all this, and it's gonna get pushed back. So that's what happened 2 years ago with that COVID season. I was
yeah,
like, I grind, dude. I put in like 80 hours, like leading up to the season, the week before the season started. I forgot that it started on like a weird Thursday, like that usual thing, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we're canceling for the next 4 months." I was like, "You have to be kidding me!" So I'm waiting until I get some sort of confirmation as to what the hell is going on.
I know. I had like a long reckoning with myself one year about like, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna scrape a shitload of college football data, maybe even the player level data, at least on the offensive side, and try to put together a good power rankings for college football. And then it was just like COVID year, and I'm like, God, I'm glad I didn't have time for
Yeah.
that, because I would have been exceedingly mad. Let's start with that. What's just I haven't followed that at all. Like, everyone's mad at everybody. Are we having baseball? Do you know? Does anyone know? Do you care?
So this is like typical like CBA stuff for like any league that happened. The owners put a lot of PR out there and then say, "Oh, we're about to make a deal," and then they pull the rug out or they put in some strange provisions that they know that they're not going to agree to it, and then they say, "Oh, the players backed out the last minute. This was our best offer." The problem is it didn't work, right? Because to their credit, this never happens, right? Like Passan and the Starks and the media folks that are cozied up to the owners that get access basically were like the owners are being ridiculous and they've covered this really well, right? They've painted the narrative in the opposite light this time to be like the owners are being ridiculous. So the PR stunt with Manfred going up with the a press conference to announce that you don't have a deal, right? Like this is all just PR. It didn't work. So I think they're posturing a little bit. I think they're realizing it's not going to work and then they're just going to probably give in at some point. They need to have a season just like the players need to have a season, I think. So okay, we're going to cancel a few games and make them up later. I think in the next couple of days, just my opinion. I have absolutely no sources out here in Hookstown. But I will say that I don't think that the lockout thing is going to be a long term deal whatsoever. Maybe we miss a week or something, but I don't think it's going to be a long term thing.
Yeah, they need each other. It's like they
Yeah,
everybody wants a season. Everybody
yeah,
wants to make this money. Although
yeah.
the Bobby Bonilla jokes have been funny. Like, somebody's getting paid. Like, at least he's getting paid. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't bet baseball. I've tinkered around with like some props. I think we've mentioned, and Drew and I have mentioned that a lot of times. Even Alex brings that up with certain sports. Like, if you really wanted to dip your toe in and not build a really complicated player level baseball model, like, start with some props, because I think you can just work on like pitching versus hitting matchups and do some nice stuff with that without really getting to it. I played around with like home run props for a little while. I think those
yeah.
markets are just like super high vig and it's super random. I think I'd have to play a lot more than I was to have fun, but I don't bet baseball, so I guess I don't really give a shit from that regard. But I know a lot of people that put out good baseball content. I kind of feel for them. Hopefully it gets sorted. I do like to pass out in my hammock listening to a Twins game on the radio. Like that's one of the
Yeah.
pleasures in life over the summer. Baseball on the radio is 100 times better than baseball on the on the internet. Now everyone just has their MLB TV
Yeah.
stream shit, but I don't
A
watch that
day
much
baseball
baseball.
game on the auto only, and it like, when you get the feeds that are just a little bit terrible, right? Like, they have, like, a little fuzz to them maybe or something. Those are the ones that get me. I'll listen to the car. If there's a rare instance in which I'm driving or something during the day to a golf course or whatever, and I wanna listen to a game or something I have money on, I'll throw those on, and you can get some, like, bad audio feeds in Baltimore, right? Like, you got John Means over 3.5 Ks, and, like, it's such a good, like, de-stressor of just listening to the game as opposed to, and then you like picture it in your mind, right? Like, you're picturing him throwing change up after change up, and listening to the announcer paint the picture. It is better, honestly,
It's
than
but no,
watching.
it's radio at the ballpark,
Yeah,
TV. Like
yeah.
that's the rankings I
I used to
love.
make
And
fun of,
the Twins, yeah, the Twins have always had good radio announcers too. I think I've been lucky.
the guys at the stadium, like, I've always made fun of them until now, like, until recently, where they put the radio in their ear and
Yeah.
watch the game. I always made fun of those people, and now I'm like, you know what?
Now I
Doesn't
get
seem
it.
that bad. You get both of we get options 1 and 2 at the game and listening to the radio. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can have the best of both worlds, and yeah. So I guess I hope we have baseball, whatever. And it is funny, like yeah, like Patrick brings up Jack Buck, Joe Buck. Like you could there were some really good radio guys across. We got off topic too. My first topic was golf, and we went straight to baseball for 8 minutes. But
It's
it's
okay.
but I've told this story 100 times. But like my favorite baseball radio moment was driving somewhere with the wife, trying to pick up something else on like AM radio, maybe the Twins game, but we were in Wisconsin and we picked up a Brewers game when she first moved out there, and it was Bob Euchre, and it just blew her mind. Like she had no idea that he was actually an announcer. She's like, like from
Yeah.
the movie? Like, yeah, that's what he like. Why do you think they went and got him? Because he knew what he was
Right,
doing. Like,
right, right.
yeah, fair. And obviously he was great in the film too. So golf though, API does start tomorrow. Did you see a lot of the information I'm using this week is from our friend useGolfFACTS. We had a nice little
Oh
storm from
god.
Justine this morning. I don't know if you're totally caught up on that. Anybody who doesn't, and I want to hear your theory on this too, because like it's just kind of implied that it's Patrick Reed's wife's burner. But at this point, like it could be somebody just pulling a gag. Like I'm 50-50 on that. But the fact is,
Yeah.
if it is a bit, it's a really good bit, and everybody in golf Twitter loves
It's
it. The
it's
fact that it
definitely
just
a
goes
bit.
away for like a month or two and then comes back with a shitstorm of like getting mad about telling. I mean, essentially, they said so it's either somebody pulling our leg having fun, or it's Patrick Reed's wife being crazy, saying that the tour is like manipulating ShotLink to make some golfers look worse on paper, and that his driving distance is like 30 yards longer than what we think.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like, why does he stink though too, right? Like, like, I think this is PFT, commenter area. Like, that's what I envision this to be. I think this is 100% a burner because it's almost like too much of the caricature of what we like would think that this egg account would be on Twitter at this point. Like it's too perfect, right?
Yeah, it does just really fill the need that we have for that account like perfectly and does a great and it goes like when it goes away and then comes back and it's always Patrick Reed stuff. I love either way. I love it. I'm glad it was in our life this morning because I needed a little break from the monotony of normal golf content.
It is
Speaking of,
fascinating.
yeah, oh good.
He was an above average distance driver of the ball, and now he is well below average. Like,
Well, he
it
switched to
is
that
fascinating.
PXG too. He started using that in Hawaii, and like that first round in Hawaii was all like nobody. It was Nuke Lelouch shit. Nobody knew where the ball was going.
Yeah,
Like that was coming off his driver and traveling. And I don't know if he just took the wrapper off it on the range that morning and started using it that day.
he's
But
a
he looked
professional golfer.
he yeah, that's the thing. And you play with different irons or different balls. It has a little different feel, but a driver does have a bit of a. I think that's probably the toughest to change. Maybe putter too, but like changing to a different driver, you see some guys struggle, but he has struggled bigly. And yeah, he's not playable right now. His numbers are big. People are getting excited. Like, look up Reed at 110 to 1. He won the Masters. He's honestly for like many, many years, he'd win one tournament at least every year. The guy would just
Usually a
win a
couple, honest. Like
yeah,
he would win
he
like
has like 12 wins on tour. He's a
yeah.
big winner. He can't play him right now.
He's one of those golfers to where it reminds me of Finau, but Finau finishing second instead, where like his numbers would always slowly climb up to this like get close to 40 and then he'd win and then it's like 25 and then they would slowly climb up to hit 40 and then he'd win again and they'd hit 25 again or 20 or whatever depending on the tournament. And Finau did that, but he just finished a second instead. So the variance has been less there. But with Reed's like ability in short game, it really gives you with the volatility in like golf in general for good short games, right? It gives you the opportunity to win when people do that, right? Like when you just randomly have crazy putter weeks or you chip in 3 times, or like at the Masters where he did hit a ton of greens, but he also made so many putts and so many like 8 footers, that he made for par that week. Like it gives you an opportunity to win a little bit more so than say the guy that randomly hits a ton of fairways or something like that. But he has absolutely cratered off the earth since his COVID issues. I mean, there were a lot of reports around that he had very serious case, and I don't want to say that he nearly died because I don't know the situation, but it seemed like he was
He was
there,
pretty
right?
sick, I feel
He
like.
was
Yeah.
up against it, yeah, a little bit. And since then, I mean, you don't need all the hypersensitive strokes gain stats to see that he is not the same golfer as he was, at least not right now.
Yeah, and I like that you brought like Tom Hoagie's putting at Pebble. Like you see a guy like once a guy's ceiling gets to a certain point, if a guy's going to gain 6, 7 strokes, even 5, like you gain 5 strokes in the field on the green, you're going to be in the top 5, top 10 every time, unless everything else is just falling apart. Like a guy with a high, even, and I hate to bring this up because we had Usti, but even Rahm's round where he won his major there over Usti, it was like, I mean, if you're going to make every putt, there's nothing anyone else can do because you start
Yeah,
with a high ceiling and then if you start with that high ceiling, you're playing well, and then you kick in the high variance shit like that, and it's going well. Everyone
yeah.
else is screwed. You brought up price too, and I don't just want to go into a bunch of Arnold Palmer picks. I'm gonna write an article this
Sure.
afternoon. I'll have a bunch. I gave out a bunch of top 40s. I gave out some pretty valuable outrights on Monday. If you were able to find Hovland at 20, he is not 20 anymore. Burns is not 50. Leishman's about where he was. And honestly, if you bet Brendan Todd with me, jokes on you because that's not a great bet. But I did take him plus at a pretty nice plus number for top 40. I do think he's a guy that just hangs around and lingers this weekend. But the pricing too, I think a lot of people start looking at that. And you brought up the Reed thing. I think that's the most interesting thing is when these guys they play well. And it's just like a betting market where a team can be hot in the NBA and they get bet every week, and eventually there's a buy point against them. The same thing, like Reed would play really well or win, and then he'd be like 18, 20, 22, 25. You couldn't bet him. And then
Hmm.
eventually he'd play some shitty rounds. He wouldn't win. He'd scuffle a little, and then he'd get down to 40 or 50 again. And then it was just like an autoplay. I think that's the biggest disconnect in golf betting with people, so many people latching onto golf betting right now is like those outright prices. Like first off, take into account a lot of other things, but so many people are just trying to like predict who wins the tournament. And I'm not saying you should fire on like 30 outrights, but so much of it is just looking at the market because you see these golfers where yeah, you end up with like let's say last week's field compared to the field before that. A good field versus a bad field. And you have these guys where they're similar prices 2 weeks. Like, well, what are we doing if it's not some course fit thing that's throwing you way off? Like, why are you betting on him at the same price as last week against a much, much tougher field? Like, there's so much context that goes into some of these things. And I think
Yeah,
that's where
there's so much
paying attention to it.
there's so much noise, right? A good example you brought up Pebble. A good example of I think of what you're saying is I bet Tom Hoagie at Pebble at 65, and he chases down Jordan Spieth, and Spieth is, shoving 3 footers, a foot to the right of where he's aiming in
Yeah.
typical Spieth fashion, and he wins. And he wins, I think it was 65 to 1. And then they go to Phoenix, and it's a better field, and Rahm is there, and that's obviously going to chew up a lot of the outright market, right? Because he just commands, double the percentage of everyone else in terms of odds of winning. Cantley was there, right? And Hoagie opens up at the same price at 65. And I'm like, he just won, and that field wasn't great, but it was okay. And he just won and he reopens at 65 again. Like you said, like if I'm just monitoring prices and I'm like, this guy gained more strokes this week at a PGA Tour event than anyone else did, and he comes out next week and he's the same price as what he was, it has to be a bigger difference than that, right? Maybe it should have only been 50, maybe it should have only been 58 or 60 or whatever it was, but it's certainly better than 65, right? Like I feel like you could just chart prices and just watch guys get to a point, and as long as their results aren't absurdly bad, like unless like Patrick Reed's ball striking right now, as long as you're not monitoring and seeing that sort of issue, like I think that you could probably just monitor price and be like, all right, this guy's average price over his last 10 events is X, and now it's, 4%, 5%, 6% higher than that. Like, let's take it, like you could probably just wait for guys to go up and down because there's just so much noise in these things. Like, okay, well, what's a good course fit? What's a good course history? How many rounds are predictive, and all this stuff. And you can figure those things out, but the differences are so marginal, right? Like Rory McIlroy next year is probably going to be a very similar golfer to Rory McIlroy right now. Like it's not going to be that different.
Loves dominoes.
Yeah, loves that one.
And I think, and yeah, I'll close with this on golf. I'm working on this a little, and I think a good exercise maybe for anybody who does want to monitor the market is because it's easy to watch an NBA team who faces one team every time they play. It's easy to monitor them as far as how the market sentiment is. Like if they're a bet on team by the market 3, 4 times in a row and they keep covering, that might continue. Eventually, it might be a bet against. This is so much trickier because of the fields, and I would just throw out course fit completely to start with, and even if it's something as horrible, and I fucking hate OWGR, but
Hmm,
even if you started
yeah,
with something as simple as OWGR would probably give you a good enough look at how strong is the field this week, just by using the official world golf rankings to determine, give
yeah,
yourself a baseline number for how strong is the field this week, and then just copy and paste from like bookmaker, grab all their opening and closing prices for all the golfers, and then compare it to next week and come up with a course strength, and then start
yeah.
looking, be like, hey, the course strength got tougher and this guy's price actually went the other way. Like, what's going on here? Well, I think you can start to actually find some of the reasoning, and I think you'll start to find signal. Like, if somebody's being bet at a sharp book like that, and they're being bet the next week into a tougher field, there's probably
Yeah.
reasons that you should be looking into. Like, it's just like anything else. The market is going to tell you honestly way more than anything strokes gained will give you.
Yeah, because we have a lot of smart people, especially now. Maybe golf wasn't always this way, and it almost wasn't
Oh,
a few years ago.
5
But
years
now
ago, I'm sure it wasn't.
there's so much information now that you can just get from just monitoring the market and be like, okay, well, this guy was this price last week and now he's the same price again, and money came in on him last week. It's probably going to come in again. You can probably do this for any sport, right? Like just make some sort of ranking that rates the market and says, all right, well, this team was an X point underdog here, and now they're playing this team, and this team's worse, right? Like you can, in at least in markets that move a lot. I mean, this golf market from you mentioned some of the outright prices moved a ton. I played Keegan Bradley at 130, I think, earlier this week, and he's like 70, right? Like,
God,
so
it's a good week for him too.
it's just there's so
Bothers
much.
me.
Yeah, your guy. That's
I
your
hate
guy.
betting on
You're not
him
on.
so much. I bet on Brendan Todd. I'm probably going to bet more on Keegan Bradley. It's annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just you can monitor things, and if you know golf well enough, like Siwoo was another one of my long shots this week, and he finished 73rd at the Genesis, and people would probably be turned off by that, but, like, he lost 6 strokes putting, so, like, if you understand how volatile that statistic is and why you might get an opportunity to bet him, he's lost, I think, like, 9 strokes putting in his last 2 events and somehow made the cut in both of them and had a T26 in there. I don't hate it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can find opportunities like that where prices are going up maybe for no reason.
Yeah, that's a good call too. It's like if you see a guy whose market price is traveling towards him being, worse implied by the market, go look at why. And if it's something like, oh, he is really playing shitty, like his whole game, he's
Mhm.
lost right now. He hasn't found a fairway or a green in like 3 weeks. That's one thing. But it's like, he had some bad putting variance. Or if you actually watch a lot of golf, be like, man, he just had some bad luck. Like he hit a
Right.
sprinkler head, he took a funny drop. Like it just wasn't
Yeah.
a good course for him. I think you can get some context. So, all right, close with some hoops. I don't know if you want to talk college, NBA, whatever. I got some time. I got a meeting at noon, but we can do whatever you want here. I'm making my conference preview still. I'll be doing an
Yeah.
OVC video here in like an hour. We'll talk
I
about some of the fun ones that are coming up. These are people are like, oh yeah, day basketball is back. Like it's back for a reason. All these shitty little tournaments that start,
mm,
they play at the campus sites, so you can play games at the same time. When you head to the Bojangles Center in Charlotte, and you have one gym, you have to start a game at 11 in the morning so you can get 4 games in throughout the day. Like that's
right.
why we have day basketball. So like the OVC, Arch Madness, the Big South, a lot of these that do neutral site stuff, like you're gonna have day basketball for a week here, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I played some NCAA against Radford. That line moved a shit ton, and they had an 11:30 tip, and I just remembered, and now I check, and they're winning. So I'm sure I've just mushed that one. I'm sure it won't. I have become like the resident Celtics fan. I'm like all the Celtics people I know are like so pessimistic about. I'm like the most optimistic, one-off Celtics fan maybe in the world right now because they're just so damn good, and I think they held the Hawks at 30 some point, 33 points in the second half last night. Like it's just it's the best defense we've seen since the Warriors, the best team of all time. This is the best Celtics. This defense by the Celtics, I think, is the best defensive team we've seen since at least since then, and maybe even competitive up against that team. Um, I had some NBA plays today. I don't know if you want any of that jargon.
Spit
Some
them,
of this stuff moved.
people, because again, I broke my spreadsheets. I can't play anything today. Also, I've been playing horrible. Ain't gonna kill me to take a day off and just work on conference previews. Although
I'm
there's a couple
actually
games I
in
like, so
this is like an opposite year for basketball for me. I have like these like really good runs at the beginning and middle of the seasons, and then like you bleed it out, right? Like that's probably like the general trend, I guess, for like any sports
a
betting.
lot of people
Yeah.
just quit in January, February because the market does sharpen up. But I no, I don't think I haven't seen you playing hot lately.
Yeah, I've had a pretty good end of the season, which the beginning of the season was so bad with overtimes and all that. I complain about overtimes every year. You know how I do that with college basketball because I do
Yeah.
bet a lot of unders just for some reason, and they always go to OT, right? Like there's just so many OT games. I tracked them this year, Andy. I'm 1-8. I had one over go to overtime, and I've lost eight unders in overtime
Yeah,
this year. So I have
I
tracked
had
them.
a under 140 and a half go to overtime at 56 all. Never had a chance. So it wasn't even a double overtime. Like those teams could not make a basket, and then they had a
And
30-point overtime.
yeah,
It's like,
you
what
just
are we?
go.
Why does the world hate me right now?
And then
But no,
they always grabs on to like the worst when you have like an under and a team's winning by like 15 and then they make it like 6 because then they're like so desperate and they fouling like crazy. They're like, man, we had it so close. We have to just keep fouling. Anything can happen, so they really go for it.
I feel it all evens out though. Like I
Yeah.
know I've had a couple overs go over with overtime. I had at least one this year that happened. I've had a favorite cover in overtime. Like it does even out.
Yeah.
Like shit
Yeah.
evens out. And like again, I've had a pretty bad stretch, but I've had worse stretches than this. You play thousands of college basketball games over the course of a couple of years. You're gonna have bad stretches.
Oh yeah.
It's been a long time. I even have a troll. This Shelly gal is I just muted her because it's like a
Oh.
egg
Oh.
Abby. But I'm like
Oh.
Shelly, why you gotta hurt me like this? Like he should have been around when it was fun a couple months ago. But no, yeah, if you want to give me an NBA pick to bet for the road, and then we'll call her a day and we'll let you get to. I'm sure you're
Yeah,
golfing
these
in
are
some simulator or something today.
maybe some driving range. I know you're a big range fan. Yeah, Indiana at Orlando. This is a touchy one. This is definitely like buckle up your seatbelts here a little bit in this game. I played under 232 and a half. It's actually still out there. Pacers at Magic. So the Magic in the last heading into the All-Star break and coming out of it, they've essentially completely flipped on what they're doing in terms of pace. They ran at about 14.4 seconds per possession coming in or over the season long, and over their last 5 games or so, they're running at 13.3. So like in general, that would be a pretty big change, right? That's a pretty big jump, and sustaining that maybe for a game or two is one thing, but start doing it for like 5 or 6 games where you're consistently under that is quite a big difference. So um, there's been some over money the last few days of Magic games for that reason, and I think we've gone and we've talked about you talked about this a little bit earlier. Like maybe we're going a little bit too far, and we'll like the world is going to start to even out here. Even if I
Yeah.
assume the Magic are going to run at a fast pace, I still make this number 231. If we look at their last game, their pace did slow down quite a bit. They were about 14 seconds per possession in that game, so they didn't run at that like 13-second or under mark like some of their games since the All-Star break and running into the All-Star break. So even if I make this number or their pace stat quite a bit higher, I still don't see this number getting there at 232 and a half. So that number's still hanging out there. Just be aware that this could get pretty crazy in terms of pace. But maybe Orlando, as they tend to do, start evening things out and sort of getting back to their usual pace here. Most of the time they don't sustain like these changes over a long period of time because it'd be like, oh, my efficiency sucks now because we're running too fast or whatever. And I don't think Orlando really has the pieces to keep this up anyway. But
Mhm.
yeah, under 232 and a half, and hold your nose and hope the pace doesn't get too crazy.
Yeah, and that's again, he's not here to defend himself. Not defend himself. I'm about to say something
Hmm.
nice, but Alex does a nice job of kind of tracking each team's market sentiment for totals and the market as a general for totals. Like what the market as a whole for that day for that week has been taking, and it is a little cyclical as like the
Yeah.
market is like, all right, we're done with overs. Now we've gone too high. We're gonna hit the under. So and you still can bet under 232 and a half at our new title sponsor, FanDuel, which I forgot to mention off the top. So
Hmm.
I'm going to take care of that now to fulfill my fulfillables. And yeah, it is still 232. I'll mention real quick too, if you're in Illinois, um, which I know a lot of you are, we did bring this up. Mobile betting is back, which was dumb that it went away, and I don't feign to understand Illinois politics,
Hmm.
but for some reason, you used to be able to sign up for mobile, and then they said now you got to drive to a casino, which is just a horrible way to run the business. Now it is back on March 5th. You are able to do mobile betting again or mobile sign up again. So I will have a link in the show notes and on the YouTube channel there for you for FanDuel if you want to get signed up in Illinois. It's like literally you don't even have to put money in. If you pre-register in the next couple days with this link and then you fire up your account when it goes live, you just have $100 sitting there for you. So pretty good deal. Obviously, take advantage of all those promos. It's hard enough to beat anything at this game. Win yourself a few extra bucks that way. Like I said, I'll have the link for you. And then Frank, where can people find your stuff if they're looking for more Frank all the time?
Yeah, I have hot takes on Twitter at real Frank Brank. Wouldn't suggest following me on there, but you can follow all my stuff, ftmbets.com. You can get under the pricing tab there. $400 for the year. If you use code Frank, you get $80 off of that. So $320 for the year. A lot better deal than the monthly, but you get the whole site. You don't, we don't divvy it up at all. You get the Discord, you get all that stuff in there with the whole site there. So $320 for the whole year. Use code Frank, ftmbets.com.
Frank is just a hilarious code to me. I don't. Maybe it's because it rhymes with their name. Thanks a lot, Frank. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks for
Yep.
joining us. Hit the thumbs up on the YouTube, and we'll see you Thursday.